The eighth type of riches, as defined by Napoleon Hill, is a labor of love. Let's explore this idea while drawing from the biblical texts for insight into its nature. To lay the foundation, I see the labor of love as having two aspects. One, finding joy in your work, and two, doing the work with love for those you're serving. It's interesting to note that among the 12 types of riches, not one of them mentions freedom from work, but together they do point toward a type of work which is uniquely central to you as an individual. In our modern world, it's very easy to dream of early retirement because it's the only way that we can think of to get out from under the load of stress and inflexibility that many people are under from day to day. And in the midst of the hustle, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that if it was all taken away, it wouldn't be long before we were longing for some sort of work again. Work is just in our DNA. It's foundational. We as human beings love to work. Many of us have forgotten that because we've been exposed to the wrong type of work for so long. A labor of love is the eighth type of riches, following just after a willingness to share one's blessings. The one that came prior to that was the capacity for faith. All of the riches work together in progression. But I want to start by taking a look at an idea that's presented in two different ways. One is from the words of Jesus, and the other is in the words of Paul. I'll start with Paul. To the Corinthians, he writes, "So now, faith, hope, and love abide, these three. But the greatest of these is love." It'll be interesting to note that the hope of achievement, the capacity for faith, and a labor of love are three types of riches that Napoleon Hill identifies within the 12. And these three types of riches don't come to an end. Even in a perfect world, these continue. The greatest, Paul says, is love. And why is love greater than faith or hope? Well, he answers this in the words leading up to it. He says, "If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all I have, and if I deliver up my body to be burned, but have not love, I gain nothing." He goes on to say that there are many spiritual gifts, which are a medium, a means to connection with God, a means to communication with and understanding of God. But love is the beginning and the end, the first and the last. Love is the reason that all is done, and it is what will last even when all is accomplished. Hope and faith can only be valuable with love at their foundation. Jesus makes the same point when he says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. On that day, many will say to me, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name and cast out demons in your name and do many mighty works in your name?' And then I will declare to them, 'I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness.'" Harsh words, but isn't it interesting that Jesus says, "The one who does the will of my Father"? But prophesying in his name, or casting out demons in his name, or doing many mighty works, or even miracles in his name, these amazing things don't qualify enough to enter the kingdom of heaven? The one who does the will of my Father. If it's not that, then what is it? Jesus taught his disciples to do these things. He commanded them to do them. He expected good works and even mighty works from his followers, but there was something missing which did not qualify these works as, quote unquote, the will of my Father. Not only did it not qualify them, but Jesus literally called them workers of lawlessness. To understand this, let's turn back to what led up to this statement. Jesus had just finished saying, "Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will recognize them by their fruits." So I want you to notice that is the key. It's the same as with Paul. It is the inward parts of a man or woman which makes all the difference. the inner man or woman. It will make the difference in the outward fruit that is produced. It will make the difference in the good that is accomplished through the words and the actions. But it is the inward part that is foundational. The inward state of a person is the will of the Father, which Jesus taught. The fruit would be the evidence, but actions by themselves that were empty of God's character would be both vain and destructive. It's a reflection of the third of the 10 Commandments, the Decalogue. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. To do works in the name of God, for someone to call themselves a follower of Christ, to say with their mouth that they have love, or they have faith, or they're speaking the truth, but they do not have the character of God within them, the light of God burning at the core, then they have effectively become false bearers of his name, false representatives of what the name of God implies. And false representatives can do far more damage than someone who never claims to be a representative in the first place. And that's why Jesus calls them workers of lawlessness. They carried the name in vain. So what does this have to do with a labor of love? It has to do with executing your work from a place of love. Love, first and foremost, for God himself. Springing from that, as the nature of God would have it, it's also the love for the people that you're serving. And third, it's the love for the work itself that you're doing. Note that it cannot be done from a place of love for money or love for comfort. It can't be. If it is, then it reduces the value of the other more important riches. Jesus says, no one can serve two masters, for he will either hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. So as soon as money begins to be the core reason for the work that you do, that work begins to empty itself of meaning. And as experience would teach anyone who has been in this position, those who chase money as their primary goal and finally come into it tend to end up in one of a few places once they achieve it. They don't kick back, relax, and enjoy the rest of their life with their new abundance. If money was their primary goal, then they either fall into depression or they just keep hustling to climb higher and higher, never knowing what enough means to them, or they begin to search the invisible world for what the physical world could not give them. And this leads in only one of two directions. One is to mind-altering substances, and the other is to God. The fact is that chasing money for its own sake is the result of an illusion. And not only that, but it is destructive to others as well as to the person seeking it. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, Paul said. And Paul was absolutely right when he said that. But here's what that means in the light of a labor of love. Money isn't evil. Money is a genius form of exchange that causes human beings to work together in harmony, so long as the interior state of those individuals is rooted in the character of God. And abundance is the ultimate desire of God for the human race. But it has to be a place of abundance that begins in the heart. Any other type of abundance void of that becomes a trap and a road to death. Let's see what King Solomon has to say about this topic. To the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner, he has given the business of gathering and collecting, only to give to one who pleases God. I find it fascinating that Solomon places wisdom, knowledge, and joy as the primary forms of wealth. And those who possess these three types of inner riches will attract material wealth as a result. Isn't it interesting that gathering and collecting, as he calls it in this context, sounds sort of like a rote, monotonous, unhappy business given to others? But at the end of the road, wisdom, knowledge, and joy ends up with material wealth as well as the spiritual wealth, while those busy going about chasing after money end up with neither material nor spiritual riches. It's the same concept that Jesus taught when he said, when he comes to see what we've done with what we've been given, he will want to see that we've used the resources we've been given, our talents, our skills, and our time wisely, so as to produce in the world something greater than the way that we found it. Jesus says, "For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken away from them." So, a labor of love is the core from which all wealth, spiritual and material, must spring. Without it, everything else is fleeting and temporary at best. But I've also said that a labor of love refers to a love for one's work itself. Of this, Solomon also has something to say. Everyone to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them, and to accept his lot and rejoice in his work or in his toil, this is the gift of God, for he will not remember much the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with joy in his heart. Wealth and possessions have to do with material riches, but the power to enjoy them comes down to spiritual riches and sound physical health, which is the second type of riches. Joy is mentioned here. Joy and rejoicing in one's work. He will not much remember the days of his life because God keeps him occupied with joy in his heart. And that's not talking about forgetting what happened yesterday. That's Solomon's way of talking about contentment, absolute contentment. And though they hadn't put a term to it yet, he's actually also referring to what we call today the flow state. It's when you lose track of time and become completely absorbed in what you're doing because you love what you do. It fits your personality and your interests precisely. You gain energy from the work. You could do it all day and not remember that you're actually working. You won't complain about it when you get home. You'll look forward to it. That doesn't mean that you won't have rest from it. It doesn't mean that you'll do it all the time. It doesn't mean that you won't have other variety of things in your life. The work you do will be a joy. Now, it's important to keep in mind that in this world, that doesn't mean that every moment of every day is going to be easy. A labor of love is not the same as a simple walk in the park. Sacrifice is a real thing, and sacrifice will be a part of that labor, some seasons more than others. Responsibility is a heavy thing, but it can still be a labor of love. King David was overwhelmed, burned out, and highly stressed when he wrote the words of his desire to just escape it all. "Oh, that I had the wings of a dove," he said. "I would fly away and be at rest. I would flee far away and stay in the desert. I would hurry to my place of shelter, far from the tempest and storm." I think we all probably know how he felt, at least to some degree or another. Being a king is no easy task. It's not a job for the faint of heart. Just like any of us, there are times when our labor of love becomes a labor of survival. Our focus shifts to, how can I find respite from this overwhelming responsibility? But even Jesus, when he chose to go to the cross, did it with joy as the end for which he was striving. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross. For the joy set before him. If Jesus can go to the cross, then we can do whatever it is that we're called to do, even when times get tough, even when the stress and the overwhelm and the fear and the uncertainty cloud our vision. If we do what we do for the joy set before us, seeking after the treasure that does not fade, that cannot fail, then we will find the strength and the courage and the perseverance to see that season through. Whatever we do, it must be a labor of love, even in the times that we don't feel it emotionally. If we remain willing to share our blessings, to keep our eyes fixed on the prize, not of money, but of purpose, the love will find us. It will fill us. First faith, Hill says, the capacity for faith. It comes before this. Out of that faith, we have the willingness to share what's been given us because we're now operating from a mindset of abundance, of always enough. And as we share those blessings, as a result of that faith, the love of God is poured into our hearts through no effort of our own. The first faith, producing action, resulting in the harvest. Faith, action, harvest. Just like any farmer or any gardener, faith that a crop can grow. Action to plant and water that crop without immediate evidence of progress. Harvest of fullness and abundance. That is the same principle in earth and heaven, in the material and the spiritual world. And finally, I want to end on this note. In a perfect world, in the new world for which we're all destined, a labor of love does not fade away. John describes this kingdom of heaven. By its light will the nations walk, and the kings of the earth will bring their glory into it. And its gates will never be shut by day, and there will be no night there. They will bring into it the glory and the honor of the nations. Kings and nations. Kings have a role to play. They have labor to accomplish. Nations mean variety, culture, differences, beautiful differences. The end result towards which we're venturing is not a state of nothingness. It's not a state of fading into the ether. It's a world where the priorities are built in proper order, beginning with the spiritual at the foundation and ending with the material at the pinnacle. If kings have a role to play, then so do we. What is meant by the glory and the honor of nations? What else besides the things that make them unique, beautiful, cultural? Things like resources. In economic terms, things like comparative advantages. Other things like art, architecture, literature, music, discoveries, wisdom, beauty of the natural world, personality, and many others like it. These are the glory and the honor of the nations. And these are brought through the gates of that kingdom, the gates which are never shut and will never be shut, because there is no night there. When love becomes the foundation through which all else is accomplished, love which is poured out as a result of faith, followed by action. And that is why a labor of love is such a powerful form of wealth. It is the beginning and the end for which all other things exist, the foundation upon which all else is built.